Introduction. Learn the secret of success in building great companies. How did Starbucks make coffee so popular? Howard Schultz, chairman and CEO of Starbucks Coffee Company, talks about how enthusiasm, love, and passion can turn a small coffee business into a global one, with lots of coffee shops around the world. The Starbucks story shows that business success depends on company principles, authenticity, respect, and dignity. And the quality and taste of coffee, as well as the quality of customer service, are essential to maintaining business growth. You'll find out in the following insights: what principles Howard Schultz considers necessary for success, why a company must adhere to the principles of integrity to succeed, how you can keep close to your employees and customers, becoming a big company. Insight 1. You have to be stubborn to succeed in business. If you talk to someone about Starbucks, they will probably know what you mean. The story of Starbucks began in 1971 with a small coffee shop selling roasted coffee. To open it, three friends, Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Boker, invested $1,350, and each took an additional $5,000 loan. The name and logo of the company, according to the founders, should have inspired thoughts about the seas and the first coffee merchants. That's why the name, Starbucks, came from the work of Moby Dick on behalf of the assistant captain of the ship, Pequod, who was called Starbuck. The company's logo was made up of a stylized image of a siren, a half-fish whose look was as seductive as the coffee itself. But how did a small coffee shop turn into a huge multinational company? It all started in 1981 when Howard Schultz tasted great coffee at the Starbucks store. It was a place where exceptionally dark roasted Italian coffee was sold. Although you can find it everywhere today, it was a novelty at the time. Properly roasted beans made coffee stronger, added strong aroma, and had a great taste of good Italian coffee. After that, Schultz realized he wanted to be part of this small company. Talking to the founder, Jerry Baldwin, he was interested in what he could do for sales and marketing. Baldwin was interested in Schultz, but the other partners were afraid that he had too many new ideas and was very keen to changes, all of which could harm the existing culture. So Baldwin had to say no to Schultz. Perhaps Schultz could be called stubborn. But in fact, that quality made it possible for him to get what he wanted. After his refusal, Schultz was devastated. But he didn't give up his desire to join Starbucks, so he called Baldwin the next day to tell him he was making a huge mistake. Baldwin, defeated by Schultz's insistence, slept with the idea and offered him a job. But Starbucks' initial reluctance to hire Schultz was not the only obstacle. Later he left the company because of disagreements over the further development of the company and opened his coffee shop, Il Giornale. Raising money to develop the company during the year, Schultz talked to 242 investors, 217 of whom said no, but in the face of rejection, he became even more stubborn and continued to attract investors. His coffee houses developed and finally became so successful that Schultz eventually bought Starbucks and turned it into a billion-dollar company. Insight 2. Success in business depends on a reputation that is hard to earn and easy to ruin. Today everyone knows that Starbucks is a successful company. But have you ever thought about how it did it and what is the secret to its success? For Howard Schultz, founder and CEO of Starbucks, there is no secret at all. Everything is simple and clear. The company's success lies in its recognized and respected brand, which is associated with the high quality of excellent coffee. Starbucks has never compromised on quality. The company has become known for its aromatic coffee with a bright flavor obtained by dark roasting beans, now called Starbucks roasting. The founders were champions of coffee purity and gave the company a strong character from the very beginning. Even when times were difficult, the company always followed its principles, trying to act honestly with its customers. In 1994, there were unexpected frosts in Brazil, which destroyed about 40% of the coffee tree crops. The prices of green coffee have risen more than 3 times. During the coffee crisis, some shareholders offered to buy cheaper coffee to keep profits. Moreover, some companies, while raising prices, still mixed high-quality varieties with cheap ones. But Starbucks never doubted the idea of providing customers with high-quality coffee. Hence, the company reduced other costs by trying to use its resources smarter. The crisis has only made Starbucks stronger. It has rallied executives, made them rid of unnecessary costs, and taught them to manage the company more effectively. And most importantly, the company has remained true to its basic principle, authenticity, maintaining the high quality of its product. All this allowed not only not to lose, but also to increase the number of clients. Insight 3. Starbucks cannot thrive and win the hearts of its visitors without the passionate dedication of its employees. From the first insight, we learned that sometimes it is useful to be stubborn with companies' first faces. But with all the other vital people in your business, your attitude should be fundamentally different. You need to build a relationship of trust based on respect. Starbucks management has worked hard to build this trust within the company. Starbucks employees receive a large benefits package. Also, employees are offered company promotions and special purchase programs called Beanstalk or coffee promotions. That is why they are not employees, but business partners, each of them striving to reduce unnecessary costs, increase sales, and communicate with customers, to conduct a dialogue from the heart. Moreover, employees participate in the company's quarterly open forums, expressing their opinion. It is a source of valuable feedback. As a result, most of the employees were so happy with their company that since 1992 they have refused to participate in trade unions by making the following statement: "You have involved us in business management. Every time we complained, you eliminated the problem. You trusted us, now we will trust you." It still makes sense to build a trusting relationship with your employees to stay with you longer. But how can you also improve communication with your customers? For example, Starbucks has a staff turnover rate of no more than 65% per year, compared to an average of 400% for other retailers. Low turnover means that the business saves time and money in training new employees. But it also means that many regular visitors already expect the barista to greet them and ask the usual. These built personal relationships with customers create a strong bond with the Starbucks brand. And it makes them come back again and again. As we have seen, trust for Starbucks is priceless. Insight 4. It is necessary to invest in infrastructure ahead of the growth curve. We all understand that spending money with caution is wise, for example, saving and spending money only on what we can afford. But in business, sometimes things are different, so we have to take big risks. If you want to succeed, you have to take a decisive step and start investing. As of December 2016, Starbucks had more than 26,000 retail outlets worldwide. Even when there were only 20 in 1988, Schultz already knew he wanted to build a big corporation. He soon realized that investment in infrastructure was most needed and repeated at every quarterly meeting that it is necessary to invest in infrastructure ahead of the growth curve. At that time, with plans to grow to 300 stores, Starbucks required a significantly higher production capacity for roasting and packaging coffee beans. As a result, a new plant with high-speed equipment was built with a 10-year capacity reserve. The company also needed highly effective managers with experience in huge enterprises who could cope with rapid growth. Also, it required a sophisticated computer information system specifically designed to handle thousands of orders in hundreds of coffee shops. All this required a large and risky investment. In 3 years, from 1987 to 1989, the company suffered losses of over $2 million. Many investors were concerned about these losses and put pressure on the business to change its strategy. But later, it became clear that the losses were the result of investments that had not yet paid off, and the coffee shops were operating at a profit. Schultz stood on his own as usual, and in 1990 Starbucks, with a solid foundation for further growth, made its first profit. Starbucks was not alone in its losses in the early stages of development. Investments that are ahead of their growth schedule are a sign of health for young and promising companies. They allow them to lay a solid foundation for further construction of the skyscraper, i.e., making a profit and actively developing for many years. The best ideas are those that create a new way of thinking or need. And to recognize an idea that is not only ahead of time but also able to work for a long time, you need an astute investor. Howard Schultz. Insight 5. Invest in people who are smarter than you, give them the authority they need, and let them do their job. Let's face it, we can't do everything on our own. However, bosses often feel threatened by their outstanding subordinates rather than using their skills as assets. On the contrary, Schultz showed great awareness and self-confidence when he hired more qualified managers in certain areas while giving them all the necessary authority. For example, when Schultz faced the challenge of building a computer system for hundreds of stores, he hired Carol Easton, an IT specialist from McDonald's. Working for a company that was much bigger than Starbucks, Carol was perfect for these tasks. Instead of managing her every step of the way, Schultz let Carol develop a program to automate trading from scratch. And this program has become successful and in demand around the world. It shows how important it is to trust those who are experts in their field and what they are talking about. In 1989, Starbucks was joined by a new manager, Howard Behar. He began to change the corporate culture actively and openly disagree with many of the solutions that the company is used to. In the beginning, working with Behar was extremely uncomfortable for Starbucks managers. But those who were smarter adapted quickly and were able to take critical comments for their value. It was also Behar's idea to hold open forums every quarter, with the help of which employees could keep abreast of the company, ask questions or express their discontent. These meetings helped Starbucks stay on top of the main course and increase its employee satisfaction. If the management felt threatened by Behar and immediately rejected his candidacy, the company would not have received his great innovative ideas, which made Starbucks a successful company. Openness to new ideas is not just vital within the company, sometimes new ideas come from outside, which leads to a fundamentally new level of cooperation. People want guidance, not rhetoric. They want to be given the responsibility to help solve the problem and authority to act on it. Howard Schultz. Insight 6. Any company that wants to be successful must rely on its values and stand up for them furiously while not losing flexibility. We all have friends who change their values on the first whim, chasing the latest trends. Sometimes we can tolerate that kind of behavior on their part, but how would you feel about a company that changes its fundamentals every week? Neither the employees nor the clients of such a company could tolerate it for a long time. So businesses must stand up for their values. As we learned, the basic principle of Starbucks is authenticity. To take this principle seriously sometimes even means refusing customer requests. For example, when aromatized coffee beans appeared, many customers asked for them. However, Starbucks refuses to use them to this day. It does not want to contaminate its high-quality coffee beans with chemical additives. Moreover, Starbucks employees always try to please the customer and can even grind coffee beans from another company. But they will refuse to grind aromatized beans. Some of these chemical additives may remain in the grinder and spoil the taste of coffee to be prepared later. Starbucks' values are so important that management sometimes has to hold lengthy discussions on issues that seem simple at first sight. When Starbucks began receiving constant requests from customers for skimmed milk, an entire war broke out in the company. Because authenticity drives Starbucks' views, lattes and cappuccinos were thought to taste real only with whole milk. But another key value in Starbucks, as in any other smart business, is to please customers. The company, faced with the dilemma of not wanting to change its values, has run extensive tests on skimmed milk to make sure that the authentic taste is not sacrificed. Latte and cappuccino with skimmed milk were introduced only after the company was convinced that they tasted as good as with a whole milk. Today, half of all lattes and cappuccinos sold come with skimmed milk. Of course, for those who are not particularly keen on coffee, it may seem that too much effort and controversy has been made out of nothing. The most important thing here is how determined Starbucks has been to uphold its values as the company has grown and changed. Insight 7. To stay ahead, always have your next idea waiting in the wings. If you want to succeed in your business, you need to get rid of views like, if everything works, why we need to change something. Self-upgrading can help you maintain your position in the future and increase your success. The basic idea is that you should make changes to your company before something stops working. Starbucks has managed to upgrade such an old and traditional product like coffee. And she did it on a scientific level. Don Valencia, founder and head of a biomedical company, began experimenting with coffee in 1988. It all started with a random thought at the kitchen table when Valencia decided to apply some of his technologies to coffee. But then research led him to develop a concentrated coffee extract, which he refined until it was impossible to distinguish coffee from real, freshly brewed coffee. Valencia showed a sample of her product to a local Starbucks barista, and then those above the hierarchy were impressed. When the product got to Schultz, it caught on to him right away. Subsequently, Valencia's invention made it possible to create products such as coffee ice cream and cold drinks in coffee bottles, making it possible to sell the Starbucks product in markets completely new to the company. Another way to make a company self-upgrading is to create a joint venture with another company. In 1994, Starbucks began working with Pepsi. But it wasn't easy. The companies were different. The scale of business, Pepsi was once in 100 times larger markets, and fundamentally different corporate cultures, which initially fell into an absolute contradiction. Instead of constantly pulling the blanket on themselves, Starbucks and Pepsi perceived the differences as complementary. They started looking for solutions that would be of interest to both companies with a positive attitude. So they launched a bottle of Frappuccino, which was a resounding success. Supermarkets were selling it so fast that Pepsi couldn't make it. The courage required to work with other companies and people for self-upgrading can pay off many times and bring the company to the international market. But in times of rapid growth, the company must also remain true to its founding spirit, the principles that led to its success. The euphoria is lasting when all participants lead with their hearts, winning not just for themselves but for one another. Success is sweeter when it is shared with someone else. Howard Schultz. Insight 8. As you become a big company, it is critical to stay close to both employees and customers. It is a classic story for large corporations when they begin to be perceived as a soulless embodiment of capitalism, which is ruthless to small business. But how can one maintain a relationship of trust with clients and employees when the entire staff of the company is over 25,000? The stock options, coffee stock, held by all Starbucks employees create a sense of partnership and connection with the company. In this way, the tendency to maintain hourly pay and benefits is maintained above the average offered by the market. But employees also believe that much more important than options are the emotional benefits of working: friendship between colleagues, communication with customers, pride in new skills and knowledge, respect of supervisors, and great satisfaction from working for a company that treats them well. A survey in 1996 showed that corporate culture was exceptional. 88% of employees were satisfied with their work at Starbucks, and 89% were even proud of it. Starbucks wants to take care of its employees and wants to be actively involved in environmental issues and compliance. For example, disposable paper cups, in which visitors take coffee to go, is a whole environmental problem. On a vast scale, they generate incredible amounts of garbage, not to mention that sometimes hot drinks need 2 cups. Starbucks is constantly looking for new ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle waste. On hot drinks cups, instead of the second, they started wearing a paper sleeve, a ring made of cardboard. Coffeehouses also sell reusable thermocups and encourage their use, providing an additional discount. Coffeehouses themselves often hold Saturday cleanup days, during which employees collect garbage around their neighborhoods. Every large company risks losing the culture, approach, and flexibility of the small business from which it started. As Starbucks has shown, even in times of serious growth, it is possible to continue to strengthen your brand, the integrity and commitment of your employees and customers. Conclusion. Main idea. The success of Starbucks lies in the authenticity of what it does and the values it adheres to. Doing so keeps in touch with its employees and customers and reinforces their commitment to the company. If you want this kind of success for your company, develop a close relationship with your customers through high-quality product and service. Share the company's profits with your employees and try to create better conditions for them. Upgrade and create yourself and your product anew, even when things are going well. Invest in infrastructure ahead of the growth curve. In our ever-changing society, the most powerful and long-living brands are built from the heart. They are sincere and resilient. Their foundation is stronger than others because it is the strength of the human spirit that strengthens them, not the advertising campaign. Only companies that have originality and authenticity live long. Howard Schultz.